After nearly 60 hours of playing, I have finished Final Fantasy XVI. And I'm sure the question that absolutely no one is asking is, where does it place in my list of favourite Final Fantasy games? Having just done a video ranking my top 9 games in the series, this would seem like an excellent time to round it out to a top 10. Please remember though, these are just my opinions, and I totally get that absolutely no one is going to agree with me 100%. And that's great, the strength of the series comes from its diversity. So let's go through it. In 9th spot, I put Final Fantasy XV. Is 16 better? Most definitely, even though they bear some definite similarities, especially in their overarching stories of kingdoms in conflict. In fact, I often found myself thinking that in some ways 16 might be what 15 could have been if its development hadn't been so tortured. I'm not saying it would have been in any way the same game, just that 15 could perhaps have been as good if it had truly lived up to its potential. Okay, in 8th place I had 12. Is 16 better? Yes, absolutely, although again the whole Kingdom in Strife aspect of both these games was similar in some ways. In fact, I think you could make a pretty strong case that 12 is the Final Fantasy game that 16 is most similar to overall. The narrative, the world, the structure, even the characters, they definitely share some elements. But for my money, 16 does more, and does it better. Then in 7th place I had 13. Is 16 better? I definitely believe so, even if I do have a particular fondness for 13 that not everyone shared. I still love the ridiculous over-the-top storyline of 13, but it can't compete with 16's grandeur and breathtaking vastness of scope. In 6th place I had 9. Is 16 better? I would say it is, but in this case I totally get why people would prefer 9. Indeed, if 12 is the most similar game on my list to 16, 9 may be the least similar, and not just because its gameplay is slow and methodical while 16's is anything but. Once again, 9 features warring kingdoms, but tonally it's worlds apart from 16. And that's no bad thing, I love 9's tone. But its lack of narrative thrust leaves it a little lower down the list for me. In 5th place I had 6. Is 16 better? Now things are getting tough. Personally, yes, I think it is, but I think it needs to be acknowledged that they are both colossal achievements for their time. The story of Final Fantasy VI, the characters, the world building, they're all amazing, but 16 is amazing too, and at this moment in time I think it's just a little bit more amazing. Okay, we're getting to the pointy end and it's becoming really tough to separate these games, so I'm going to jump right to the top. I ranked 14 as my favourite Final Fantasy of all time. Is 16 better? No, it's not. 14 remains the pinnacle of JRPG storytelling for me. And even if you consider each expansion separately, as I did in my last video, I still think both Shadowbringers and Endwalker are better than 16. I think you could also make a case that if 12 isn't the most similar FF game to 16, then 14 definitely is, and that makes sense given how much crossover there was in the development teams. And 16 has a technical edge, it looks goddamn amazing in a way 14 never can, but yet 14 manages to trumpet for both epic moments and heart-rending personal stories. But I'll also say again what I said last time, if you think 14 shouldn't be on this list, that it has an unfair advantage due to its ever-evolving nature, that's fair, and you can exclude it from these rankings if you want. Not that you need my permission to do that. So we're left with what I would call the big 3 single-player Final Fantasy games, 10, 7 and 8. These are all games that I dearly love, and for 16 to be a contender amongst them automatically makes it one of my favourite games of all time. But where exactly does it end up? Is 16 better than 10? Although these games are very different again in setting, tone and characters, they both have a strong, driving narrative with ever-increasing drama and forward momentum that often link them in my mind as I played through 16. In my last video I talked about 10 being the Final Fantasy game I always recommended newcomers to the series played first, because of that strong narrative and fundamentally solid gameplay. Well, now 16 is also a contender for that recommendation, depending on whether the potential player is more of a fan of turn-based or action-based combat. But as to which is better, it's a very tough call. But at this moment in time, for the range of emotions it gave me and for the impossibly epic scale of it all, I'm going to give it to 16. And now, in 3rd place I had 7. Is 16 better? I really had to think about this. Sometimes as I played through 16 I found myself thinking that, yeah, by some miracle this has surpassed the greatness of 7. And yet, ultimately I think it falls short. Not by much, but 7 is such an amazing game, the characters are so iconic, the story is so insane but so personal, The world is so full of life and surprises that 16, for all its greatness, can't quite compete with 7. And as for 8, well, if it ranks ahead of 7, it can hardly rank behind 16, but I do want to reiterate that it's mainly the profound personal resonance that 8 had for me that made me put it in second place. And again, for all of 16's greatness, it can't quite match that either. So there you have it. I put 16 at 4th place in my ranking of the top 10 Final Fantasy games. And honestly, I'm astounded to be saying that. I knew I'd love the game, but I did have some concerns about the decisions that were being made. These concerns didn't last long once I started playing. Truly, 16 is one of the best Final Fantasies ever made. Well, thanks for watching. Do feel free to tell me how much you disagree in the comments. Until next time though, get off my lawn.
Ugh!